to start off today's episode, I want to talk about Dune.
Oh yes, I've been waiting to talk about this ever since I saw that movie. I've
Yeah,
been waiting for you to watch it.
yeah. So I finally got around to watching Dune, and it's an amazing movie. I absolutely loved it.
The one thing that has been in my mind is that this is the most expensive looking movie I've ever seen. Like
Yeah,
I'm sure like it had a moderate budget compared to most sci-fi films, but this one just the design, the costuming, the lighting, everything. It looked so clean and it portrayed exactly what it wanted to. Like you could barely tell that any CG was used in the movie whatsoever.
yeah, I totally agree. For one, the vibe it gave me aesthetically is remember in The Last Jedi when Holdo rammed her ship straight through the Star Destroyer,
You mean
and that
one
and
of the few good scenes in the movie?
debatable. Anyways, but during that scene, just that wide shot of her tearing through the Star Destroyer, that aesthetic is what I had for the entirety of Dune. It was that beautiful for me.
Honestly, I would go even further and say, honestly, I wouldn't even say that was the pinnacle of The Last Jedi. I would honestly say that the best looking shot in that movie was Luke looking down the what were they? The AT-AT walkers were they?
Oh yeah, when he was looking down on the First Order walkers, whatever they were.
Yeah, that was a beautiful shot.
It was. But back to Dune. Overall, I found Dune to be just so beautiful. Like I really liked how much the blue eyes of the Fremen contrasted like the just the brightness of everything else. Like the Fremen's blue eyes were so bright that it really does give off that it's something that is caused by an external source, being like the spice. And I really did like that.
Yeah, honestly, for me, what stood out was just the world building. Like it had a lot to throw at you. Honestly, you didn't leave the theater thinking that you missed anything.
Yeah,
Because I mean, it doesn't like spoon feed you, but it has a lot to throw at you. And I think it does a really good job explaining pretty much everything.
yeah, it really did. And the craziest part is that they had all of that, and they've only adapted one half of the first Dune book.
No way, it's only one half.
Yeah, this is only like where the movie ends is the halfway point of the first Dune book.
Yeah,
They haven't even gone to the second book, which is Dune Messiah.
yeah, which is astonishing because I feel like there's so much more because of how much that we absorbed in.
Yeah,
Like I forget like this isn't like a full series. Like it was just a book that came out in the 60s.
it is a full series.
I mean, yeah, like
Yeah.
the whole series is contained within the 60s, right?
Uh, well, it's not in the 1960s by our standards.
No, I mean like released in the 60s.
60s and 70s. But there are after the original author died, I believe it's his brother or son. They have the same last name. That's been continuing with spin-offs.
Okay.
Yeah, and those spin-offs are still releasing. Because I know the original six Dune books, they do end on a cliffhanger because unfortunately the author, I believe his name is Frank Herbert. I believe he passed away while working on the seventh book.
Yeah.
So Dune, the sixth book ends on a cliffhanger. So I'm really interested in seeing if we ever get to that point with the Dune movies, how they'll handle the fact that it ends on a cliffhanger.
Yeah, honestly, this was my first introduction to the whole series as a whole, if I'll be honest.
Yeah, on no, it was my first introduction as well, and I can totally see why famous series such as Warhammer 40K and Star Wars take a lot of inspiration from Dune
Yeah.
because it really set the mold. I mean, a galactic empire in the Imperium, which also, kind of, which also kind of inspires the Imperium of Man from Warhammer 40K.
Right.
Then you also have the desert planet, obviously inspiring Tatooine,
Yeah.
and even the Bene Gesserit. They're kind of like the Jedi in a way.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Yeah, they're like a religious cult. They're like a mixture of the Jedi and the Sith. More like the Sith in the sense that they're the ones controlling everything with how they're like doing their whole selective breeding process to bring about the chosen one, kind of like how the Sith do. in Star Wars, but they're kind of like the Jedi in the sense that they're this massive order that's intertwined with like the government.
Yeah, I can't really identify which one they more side as, like as far as what they would later inspire in Star Wars.
Yeah, I think they inspire both because
Yeah, probably.
yeah,
Just
but
probably just different interpretations that split off.
yeah, but honestly, I loved it. I love the acting in the movie too.
Yeah, the acting was. I wouldn't say the acting was weak, but it wasn't like the standout of the film. I would say the acting was still really good. Just that
Yeah,
wasn't like what's made the movie an A for me.
yeah, I did like I like Jason Momoa's character Duncan Idaho.
He was a pretty easy character because he wasn't too complex. So, but I think they did get the right actor for
Yeah. Um, I am just really interested in seeing where it's going forward because Paul has the ability to see into the future, but it's not just a linear path. He sees multiple futures,
him. Yeah,
and he gets to really like pick and choose from what future he sees to carve his own future in a way. And I find that to be very interesting and a very interesting spin on character can see into the future.
yeah, because most of the time when you see like prophecy, destiny, um, and that kind of stuff, a very linear storyline. But yeah, I'm very open to the idea that this could be like there could be multiple paths to the end. And I mean, this being like a 60-year-old novel, uh, pretty much know where this is going. The movie practically implied where the movie was going with this,
Yeah.
going with him uh, creating a war against the entire Imperium.
Yeah, he's gonna lead a holy war against the Imperium in his name, and that's gonna be really interesting because it's very clearly framed as a bad thing.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, because
because
the movie doesn't like imply at all that what he's doing is good, because he's pretty much just pushed himself into that because that's the one path that he sees. Because it doesn't like he's not doing it for like I guess self-righteous isn't the correct word. He's not doing it for like a
an
more
alter for a moral
for
good.
a moral good, right?
This is through and through. This is revenge.
Yeah,
The Imperium has screwed him and his family over, so he's going to lead the Fremen and be their messiah. And he's basically going to just lead a holy war across the universe.
right.
And I'm up to Dune Messiah currently. I've been listening to audiobooks, and so far, in the little bit of Dune Messiah that I've been in, this holy war has a lot of casualties. Like, far bigger than any war that you can imagine in our history. The casualties are exponentially higher.
Could you compare it to any in fiction?
Not on the level of the 365 trillion killed in the Yuzan Vong War from Star Wars, but about several billion are dead. Like tens of billions of humans across the universe
Did,
die in this holy war.
did you have to dive into the extended universe for that one?
Yes, yes, I did. But
Okay.
The Yuzan Vong War in Star Wars is a whole other can of worms. But yes, they did kill about there was 1 trillion death for every day there was in our normal calendar.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I honestly might jump on and just read the original novel as well.
Yeah, it's honestly really interesting, and for one, there are some things that are conveyed a bit better through the novels. Like, for example, the head lady of the Bene Gesserit, her relationship with Jessica is a lot more. It's a lot less antagonistic than the movie portrays it. Like, yes, there's antagonisms between them, but it's more of like they love each other in the way that a master loves her student, but also they have a lot of conflict because it's like a cult, and Jessica is clearly going against the cult.
Hmm.
So, I mean, they even mention it by the fact that Jessica has a boy instead of producing daughters.
Or
It,
I don't even think the issue was that she produced a boy, is that she taught a male child their ways, if I'm interpreting the movie correctly.
no, it's specifically the fact that he's a boy. As that the plan is that she's supposed to produce a daughter, and the daughter is supposed to be married off to the Harkonnens.
Mm,
And then that daughter gives birth to a male. And
yeah.
that male becomes Jesus.
Yeah, which the whole idea that they're controlling everything from like a fourth dimensional perspective, like they have a whole view of time itself, is kind of crazy.
Yeah. It, well, not even then. Their abilities are just Paul's, but to a lesser extent. But because there's so many of them, they're able to like see the pathways to what they want. But clearly, they can't see it all because they never predicted Jessica giving birth to Paul.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Do you think they even predicted uh, the betrayal that happened on what's the planet called again?
Uh, Arrakis?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, most definitely. Like, everyone knew that the Atreides were supposed to die on Arrakis. I mean, even Paul's father, Leto, he knew that they were going to die on Arrakis.
Yeah.
Like, it was fairly obvious that Arrakis was a trap to everyone, but it's like Leto said, this is an offer you can't refuse. When the Emperor tells you to lead a planet, you go do it.
Yeah. Pretty much. I mean, the fact that the whole planet was practically sabotaged
The Harkonnens.
by the Harkonnens, the kingdom that ruled it beforehand, before it was handed off. It was clear sabotage, and it was just no hope from there.
Yeah, it was pretty much no hope. And but I still really liked it. I liked Gurney, played by Josh Brolin.
They really just had some really like high power or high level
Actors.
actors.
Yeah, I mean, it deserves it.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it really deserves it. I really like, I can't pronounce his name, but the guy that plays Paul, I really liked him in the role. I felt like he really conveyed the feelings that Paul had, the feelings of conflict and anger and fear.
it actually took me a while to get used to it because at the beginning it really didn't feel like I could understand his character more than just the everyman trying to interpret this world as like our vector into this new universe. But then in the later half, after the attack on Arrakis, I could actually see that forming. So I do agree with you, but I do think it takes some time for that to develop.
Yeah, that's fair. What did you think of the voice?
Yeah, that was something else.
The voice as a power is so broken, but I love the little details that they had, like bringing someone who's deaf on board to kill Jessica and Paul, specifically to counter the fact that they know Jessica can use the voice. Not much good that you could do when two other people in the room are still not deaf.
Yeah, I mean that also probably inspired a lot of like of
That
the Jedi.
definitely that inspired the Jedi mind trick through and through.
Like it's obvious the connection that Star Wars stole that from Dune,
Yeah.
without a doubt.
It was, oh my god. I just love where she like pulls it down. She's like, kill him! Free me! And you just see the guy just fucking like slit his neck and throw him out.
Like no hesitation whatsoever.
I just love it.
But yeah, it's an absolutely busted power.
Yeah. I really liked how the Reverend Mother, how she used it on Paul in the beginning, where you just see him just like almost like when Goku first went Ultra Instinct Sign, just the world around him just like flashes forward and he's just there. That
Honestly,
was Paul.
I do want to talk about that scene as a whole because that was a really tense scene for sure.
Oh yeah, the
Like like I go into the theater and I'm like, okay, this is a 2.5 hour movie. This character's not dying, but I don't know that scene. It kind of threw you for a loop.
it was so good, and it's especially good how well they interpreted it after going back and reading the book because it's so intense. Like he pulls his hand away, and in the book, it's described as the most unimaginable burning on just known to existence. Like he expects his hand to be burned to a crisp, that there'll be nothing but ash.
But in the movie was I feel like I vaguely remember this. There was like no music at all, if I remember correctly,
I don't think there was music,
because
but
that
they
did
started to build it up as he started to like start screaming.
yeah
The
because
music
this
started coming in.
because that silence I think really did help with that scene because I think music would have ruined that scene.
Yeah.
But the fact that they waited helped it so much.
Yeah, and I also just liked how just the way she was able to get him in that position by using the voice on him, getting him to put his hand on the box, and then holding a poison needle to his neck, ensuring that he fails, he dies. No two ways about it.
Right.
And I really liked that. That scene overall was just
Yeah.
very well done, especially with Jessica standing outside, letting it happen, knowing that her son can die, but just really just praying that he doesn't.
Because it was portrayed pretty well that she was helpless to or to guide that scenario whatsoever. She
Yeah.
couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah, I imagine that if she tried to use the voice on the Reverend Mother, it would have just failed.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, but it was really good.
I mean, also the fact that she was locked out of the room in the first place.
She wasn't locked out. She was there to stop other people from getting it.
Right.
She was gonna kill
And by
anybody that
locked
hurt.
out, I mean the voice was used on her to keep her out of the room.
Yeah, I don't even think it was the voice that was used. I think it's just mainly her loyalty to the Bene Gesserit, because she was. I don't think it was the voice being used on her, because whenever we see the voice being used, you hear the monstrous echoey voice. But
That
when
is
it
fair.
came to Jessica, I think it's more that she knows that this has to happen because
Yeah.
she's gone through it.
Yeah. I mean, the threat, I mean, is
Yeah.
still there.
Oh yeah. What did you think of Leto as a character?
You'll have to.
Leto is Paul's dad.
Okay. Yeah, because he was only around for half the movie. I'm so sorry. I forget names so fast.
Yeah.
But um, see, honestly, I forget a lot that happens in the first half because honestly, the second half of the movie is what stuck with me.
So
Because like the
yeah.
only stuff that I remember from the first half is like the design of it, which I cannot stop describing how much I absolutely love. But I mean, he does his job. Honestly, there weren't really any bad actors in this movie whatsoever.
Yeah. I really like.
There was
Yeah.
only average to really good actors, honestly.
Yeah. I really liked Leto. I really liked how he interacts with Paul, in the sense that all he ever wants for Paul is to just be his son.
Yeah,
Like while he does want Paul to lead, he understands that if it ever came to a point where Paul was given the choice and he didn't choose it, he'd be fine with it. Unfortunately, we know Paul will lead, and it will not be good.
yeah.
But
I do also like how like most of the characters do interact with each other. Like this is a living, breathing world. Like
yeah,
you can buy that this is all happening within this fictional universe.
yeah, I really liked how they portrayed, especially Dr. Yue
Oh
and
yeah,
his betrayal. I really liked it because it seemed so human, in the sense where he was like, I'm betraying you. I'm telling you I'm betraying, but I will give you a chance to get revenge. Because it makes more sense that if someone kidnapped your wife and is holding them hostage, you don't just do whatever you gotta do for them and then fuck off. If you have the power to screw them over, you will try and screw them over while you're doing what they want.
which is actually very rewarding because he never gets his reward for the sabotage.
Yeah, he doesn't. He gets. I mean, his wife was. I kind of figured that his wife was already dead to begin with.
I mean, yeah, considering how they kind of portrayed the, I guess, main antagonist of the movie.
Yeah, but after he was. But it was really good to just see him just bite down and just kill almost everyone.
Yeah,
The only reason the head Harkonnen even lives is because he can levitate.
pretty much. Honestly, when I saw him levitate for the first time, I thought he had really long legs. Not gonna
No,
lie,
I did too. I thought he
like
had
that
really
shot
long.
was so confusing
I
because
thought he had really long legs. I was like,
like that was the one shot I was kind of iffy on because the
it,
long rope was like, okay, does this guy just have really long legs? Because that does not fit with anything that I've seen in this movie.
like seeing him in full, it reminded me of the scene from Team Four Star where Frieza's like, "I was led to believe your species survived on nothing but water. How is he so fat? Like, how is he that big? Like, I understand how he can levitate. It's because of the stuff that's on his spine that goes all the way to the ground.
Right.
But I'm like, Jesus, man, he is just giant. And it did save him because he was able to just. I just imagine him floating up to the ceiling like a balloon and just hitting the corner of the wall and not being able to move. But hey, it saved him.
Hey,
Barely.
director's cut. We're gonna see it in the director's
God.
cut.
Oh my god. I know they go into detail about why he's so fat in the books, but God, he's so big.
We do not body shame here.
No, it's not body shaming. It's just, he's just a giant. Like, Dave Bautista in Dune, his character, is already a pretty big character. Like, he's very big and physically imposing, but his uncle is massive. And you're like, that is an intimidating person. Like, if I saw him, if I lived in the Dune world and I saw him, I'd probably, like, just fucking shit myself. Like, that is a massive person.
Because, I mean, in the Dune universe, because it deviates from Star Wars in this fact, most races don't really deviate from the humanoid, like, standard, right? Like, they mostly look like humans, if I'm not mistaken, based on what we've seen so far.
Yeah, if Dune is the one to inspire 40K, then I imagine it is that it's a bunch of a bunch of humans from Earth. Well, yes, I believe they're all humans because they're all from Earth. They've just spread across the universe. Because the Atreides family is actually traces their bloodline back to ancient Greece.
Huh.
Yeah. And the Harkonnens, I believe, trace their bloodline all the way back to Germany.
Ah. Okay.
Oh.
What?
Germany. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see where my mind was going with that.
Yeah, I actually just got that. Oh my god.
Yeah. Yeah.
Damn. That is pretty good.
I mean, yeah, this was a really well put together movie, and I assume the books are just as good, because honestly, I might pick them up just because of the fact that I saw this movie.
I listened to an interview that the author gave when talking about his thought process for creating the second book. And he talks about how he talks about how charismatic leaders should have a warning on them for how dangerous they can be. Like, he talked about how John F. Kennedy was probably the most dangerous president that we had up to the point in his life, because this was written in the 60s, so John F. Kennedy was a very recent president. And how he was such a charismatic president, yet he led us to Vietnam. And then he even talks about Watergate, which happened later on. He talks about how Richard Nixon with Watergate shows exactly why we need to distrust the government and its charismatic leaders. And he then goes on to talk about how a charismatic leader like Hitler can bring the population to fully embrace anti-Semitism to the point of murdering millions of Jewish and Romani people.
Yeah.
So if that is any indication for how the future will go, Paul is going to be an absolute monster in the worst ways possible, and I cannot wait to see it.
Oh, I can't wait to see how audiences would react to it, because this movie, I think it did surprisingly well, because I believe they just greenlit the sequel.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of question in the air about whether or not a sequel would be greenlit. Thankfully, we did get news that has happened.
Yes. So there's one thing I do want to address, because it kind of ties into how Paul is probably going to be pretty fucking evil. But some people were saying how this story was quote unquote problematic because of the fact that the Bene Gesserit, from what we've seen, is an all-white Illuminati-esque organization trying to bring about a white Superman, pretty much. Paul is basically supposed to be like a super soldier. That will be their messiah, and then Paul ends up leading a group of brown-skinned individuals like a white savior.
Mm.
And while I can definitely see that, I believe in a way that's the point, and that it's not good. Like, this is like everything they said, I believe is completely accurate, And some say it's problematic, and I'm saying, no, that's the point.
And we should elaborate into this to why we feel this way, because in all honesty, the movie doesn't portray this as a good deed at all. So that's why it's not problematic. Not because this isn't described as like a hero's journey in the sense that this is the way to beat the bad guy. No, this is a story telling about how a would you describe him as like a fascist uprising?
So here's how I would more describe it. I don't.
Because he doesn't really rule over people. He's just a harbinger of war.
So here's how. So here's how I interpreted this actually. So while he is interpreted as the hero, we're slowly seeing, especially towards the end, where he kills that other Fremen in the duel,
Right.
that his old self, that would have been a kind and caring person, that could have been a compassionate ruler, died.
Yeah.
He died when the he died when like Paul Atreides as we know him is dead
Yeah,
after killing that man.
because he really, I mean, in that fight alone, he didn't really show any signs of compassion. Like not even in the beginning.
Well, he did show compassion in the
Like,
beginning
but it
by
was
asking him.
very little.
He was asking him
But
to yield, but then when the reality dawned on him that there is no yielding, only death, he very quickly was able to.
yeah, like there was no way like he was escaping that being a compassionate person.
Yeah,
There was no escape for him.
yeah, because if you notice through his future sight, the guy he duels, he was his friend and master in one future. And so he believes that, oh, if I spare him, it'll be fine because I know in the future that he'll be my friend. But no, he kills him and he then realizes, I don't save people, I kill people.
Yeah, which
That was just a future in which he was my friend. But that's not my future.
yeah, yeah. But to go back to what we were saying earlier, definitely. Um, now I even forgot what we were talking about.
Dune, being
The being
white savior.
problematic.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even like even as like a harbinger of war. This is not supposed to be interpreted as a good thing throughout this entirety of the story. So I don't really understand why people are interpreting this as problematic and can only chalk it up to bad media interpretation.
yeah. For one, like, while I do see how they kind of do paint him as a hero at times, which is normal for the protagonist to be framed in somewhat of a heroic light, I feel that because people just aren't familiar with the source material, they kind of walked into this and were like, what is this? Not knowing that, oh, that's the point, and it only goes downhill from there.
Yeah,
Like the universe isn't gonna be saved. Like this isn't like Anakin Skywalker, Luke Skywalker bring balance to the Force type shit. This is more like this is a normal person, but we're gonna make him light Yagami with an army.
oh god. Yeah, because the movie really does a good job at showing, like through the different futures, that this is not a happy ending.
Yeah. And I really do feel for him because he does freak out at the realization that this will happen. That he will be just a warlord. He will be a
Yeah,
warlord that will wage a jihad across the universe in his father's name.
yeah,
And I know from at least where I am in the books that, oh boy, it is not good. Like the results that I believe when adapted into movie form, people are going to be absolutely livid,
oh
in
yeah,
my opinion, because they're going to feel that they were led, that Paul was some type of ordinary hero, and then seeing him basically become, I wouldn't say he's the next Hitler. I would say he's the next Genghis Khan.
oh yeah.
So seeing him become the next Genghis Khan, I believe people are going to lose their minds.
I just hope people approach this in an intelligent way because this was because I only heard about this discourse an hour before we started recording. So which kind of astonished me because the movie, because I felt that I understood it entirely that he was going to be a villain in the sequels.
Yeah,
So I was kind of confused when I heard that
yeah.
when you first told me about that,
I think it's just some people aren't used to really villain protagonists in the sense that
which is weird considering we just got Joker.
no, but here's how, in my opinion, Paul as a villain protagonist will differ from Joker. Joker's a villain protagonist because we know already through pop culture that Joker's a villain.
Yeah, well,
Paul Atreides isn't well known in pop culture, so he will be interpreted as another Luke Skywalker, not knowing that this is far, far different than Luke Skywalker. Like, this will be during, like, so there is a period in the expanded universe where Luke Skywalker falls to the dark side and he becomes Emperor Palpatine's right hand. Paul is that, but instead of it being Palpatine's apprentice, he is Palpatine. He was Luke Skywalker and turned into Palpatine. That's what Paul is, and I don't think people are ready for that.
yeah. This I'm definitely excited to see how people are going to react to the sequel because
Yeah, because I can also see how some people are coding the Fremen, like the Fremen as kind of like the indigenous population that's being colonized,
because they're pretty much like you
because
could
they are.
because you could say like that they live in the sand. That's where they live, and I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah, I can see where they're coming at from that, but you're
yeah.
missing the whole point of the movie.
Like the Fremen population, yes, is this indigenous population, and yes, they are dealing with colonization, but no, absolutely not. Is it going to be a situation where it's this white savior leading them to freedom? This is going to be a warlord leading them to conquest.
Right.
I mean, we see it. We see when he returns to his home planet. He is he has a whole war bound with him. Like this is going like I really cannot wait until part 2 comes out because that will be the second book. And that's going to describe the second not the second half of the first book, which will describe his revenge campaign before Dune Messiah, where where I am in Dune Messiah, he this is after he has succeeded in the first part of his revenge,
Yeah.
which is waging war on Arrakis.
Yeah.
But overall, I think this movie is going to be. At first, I thought this movie was great. I cannot wait for the sequel, and the books right now have me gripped. Like it is, I for one, I could see how it's so inspirational because the ideas that come from this book, knowing that it was the first of its kind, I could see how it inspires modern day sci-fi. And it is a real shame that it's not as well known in pop culture
Because most people interpret Star Wars as the birth of the sci-fi genre.
of the space opera, yeah.
Yeah.
But no, Dune inspired Star Wars. Like I remember I saw criticisms from some people saying this is a Star Wars ripoff.
When no, Star Wars ripped it off.
Yeah, I was like, this is no Star Wars ripoff. This
This
is what made Star Wars Star Wars. Without Dune, there is no Star Wars in the way that we know it.
yeah.
Because I mean, if you look back at the original draft of Star Wars, it was originally titled Luke's Starkiller and the Force of the Wills. And the Wills in Star Wars mythology are a Gena Gesserit type group of individuals that watch and minorly control the galaxy from the sidelines, like the Bene Gesserit.
That's interesting.
So you can totally see where George Lucas was getting his inspiration. I mean, we still see it with the politics that were teased during the original trilogy that we then come to see in fruition in the prequel trilogy. The Messiah of the Chosen One to the Jedi between Anakin and Luke. Tatooine as a whole, the Tusken Raiders most definitely being a reference to the Fremen. the concept of spice being a drug, which is also a drug in the Star Wars universe. Jabba the Hutt, I am convinced was inspired by the Harkonnen chief,
Right.
and I just you can see it. You can see where George Lucas was inspired by this just in the first movie.
Yeah. I would say this movie was probably a 9 out of 10 for me.
Oh yeah, definitely a 9 out of 10. Cannot wait for part two. And right now, it's my number one movie of 2021.
I did want to talk about that because at this point, of all the movies I've seen this year, this is probably the best, but
I,
because of the past decade, my favorite movie of all time was The Lighthouse, which was a 10 out of 10 for me.
oh yeah, The Lighthouse. I rewatched
Bec-
it over the weekend, and it's still amazing.
yeah, but because I would say I'm not disappointed by this movie. This movie is phenomenal in every aspect, but it wasn't a 10 out of 10 for me just because of like minor things here and there. Because it really didn't like break the mold, but it was the best example of anything this genre has to offer.
Yeah, and I have to go back and watch the 1984 version of this movie.
I was told to avoid it at all costs.
Yeah, I was told that it was bad, but I've also heard that it's campy.
I don't think campiness fits this universe. I'm sorry, I don't.
I don't think it does, and from what I've seen, the scenes that I have seen from the 1984 version,
I've
yeah,
I've seen one clip from the 1984 version, and it was a point where they used the voice, and it was just, oh, it was so goofy. I couldn't take it seriously.
yeah.
Because
I
the
think
scene,
this modern interpretation definitely fits the vibe of this franchise.
yeah, which the fact that it could be interpreted properly 60 years later was pretty astonishing. Like, walking out of the theater, I was surprised that it was an IP from 1960.
It's so good.
Yeah,
I cannot wait. Like the from what little fight scenes we saw in this movie, I know that in the future it's only gonna get better.
yeah, which thankfully they didn't make this like a 300 style fight mess of a movie because it focused a lot on the world building, the politics, and just the journey to where the movie ends.
There's one thing that I wish they brought up, which I know some people are complaining about, but was answered in the books. The shields that they use and why they use swords. The shields that they use, if blasted with plasma, causes a nuclear explosion. That is why everyone fights with swords, as
Yeah.
it's the only way you can kill someone through the shield without setting off a nuke.
That is one thing I did want to talk about because there were a lot of like they put a lot of details into that because in the first like training sequence they show like it like the shield reacting when what was his name when
Gurney?
yeah, when he was helping Paul get up the when he was helping him get up, the shields reacted to each other when they were grabbing each other. The attention to detail on that was pretty good.
Yeah, I
I
really
did
like
like that little detail, despite my little knowledge on the universe as a whole at that point.
Yeah, because I did wonder. I was like, huh, why is it that they use swords? I mean, is it the rule of cool, or is there actually a reason? And turns out there is a reason. They're all walking nukes.
Honestly, I don't even think like Rule of Cool even inspired have this universe. This universe was really well thought out.
Yeah, in which I just realized that Star Wars probably got the bombastic sword fights from Dune as well. Oh my god, this movie. This franchise, I can see how it inspired an entire genre.
I would just say people need to go watch it because these movies need to do good. We need to have more movies like this.
Yes, because for as good as the MCU is and superhero movies, we need movies like this that tell stories in such unique ways that doesn't involve, the tie-ins as much.
Yeah,
Like Marvel movies are great. They're great because they tie into each other, which gives you a sense of reward for watching all of the movies and being rewarded by it. I mean, that's why No Way Home is so hyped. It's literally rewarding all the fans from previous Spider-Man films. But this is a different type of reward that you get.
because I do want to touch back on the fact that this is probably the best movie of this year because so far, with the exception of maybe looking into the future, maybe No Way Home, were there any movies that good this year?
I mean, there was the Suicide Squad,
I,
and there
I
was Shang-Chi.
Shang-Chi was, I would say the only thing holding Shang-Chi back is the fact that it adheres heavily to the Marvel formula, but it is, I would say, the best example of that formula, just like how Dune is the best example of the would this be a space opera?
This is a space opera for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, it's the best example of the space opera genre. I would say Shang-Chi falls well into the Marvel formula, where it is the best example of that formula. The Suicide Squad was a very great comedy. I did love that very much, especially considering what it had to build from with the original Suicide Squad and how that one was practically unwatchable.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, really, no other movies this year came out that
Wait, there was one. The animated Injustice
don't even get me started on that.
movie.
Don't even get me started on that
Fine.
because that movie is terrible and I get nothing but clips recommended to me on my YouTube feed every single day of that goddamn movie and I'm tired of it.
Oh God. Yes, let's not get into Injustice and why it's a dumpster fire. But overall, you guys can probably tell we really like Dune. We think
Yeah,
it's a great movie. We think it's a great franchise, and we're really looking to see more from it.
okay.